Salam Sejahtera and welcome to another edition of Perception, where we discuss current issues that are daily topics of concerned discussion among multicultural Malaysians of all walks of life. Ladies and gentlemen, our topic of discussion today is the rising cost of living. And to discuss this matter, we have with us Yang Berhormat Charles Santiago, the Honourable Member of Parliament for Klang. YB, on behalf of TV Pass, I thank you for being with us on this edition of Perception.
Thanks for the kind invitation.
YB, in not raising the prices of petrol on May 25th, the government went to great lengths to describe its decision as being responsive and concerned for the economic suffering of the rakyat. But just 7 days after that, they raised electricity tariff rates. Is the BN government sincere and sensitive about the economic suffering of the rakyat?
Let me see how I could answer the question. It's a loaded question. I think the first point to note would be that oil prices in Malaysia actually have increased or has been increased in the last couple of months, but it is of course for around 97, not around 95, but the majority of Malaysians use 95 though, not 97. But what I understand is a lot of people now who have used 97 are beginning to use 95, so the consumption of 95 is quite high at this point in time. So the first point to note is yes, there is an increase in price of oil, and the price of 97, sorry, but I think the price of 95 will increase. It's a matter of time before the government decides to increase around 95. And the only reason why they have not increased at this time is because they are right now feeling the pulse of the country and what the people are saying in relation to the increase in the tariff of electricity tariff. So I think if in their view, if they find that people are still people accept the increase and there isn't much resistance or much criticism against the government on the increase of prices in the last couple of months, not only for electricity prices but also food prices, cut in diesel subsidies and so on and so forth. If they have this feeling that that people are cool towards it, people accept it, then they will decide to increase around 95. I think they're just waiting as a matter of time. But the government has given a caveat, and they have said that if the price, international price of around 95 goes up anywhere between 110 and 120 US dollars, then they will start rethinking about increasing it though. So I think one has to be careful to say that the around 95 will not increase. I think all signs are showing right now that the government is waiting to see what the people are saying though, before they decide to increase it.
So how would you factor in this tariff hikes on electricity?
Well, I think clearly it was a strategy they had to develop. Either they increase around 95 or they increase the tariff of electricity tariff though. They had to do one or the other. They couldn't do both at the same time because the people will get really angry though. So I think what they did was they said, okay, let's go with the electricity first and let's see what the reaction is.
By the decision of the government, is the government implying that an increase in tariff rates is a lesser economic burden to the rakyat than raising the price of petrol?
I think the question must be seen from a macro standpoint though. I think in the last 8 to 9 months, there has been a substantial increase in price levels. A substantial increase in price levels. For example, if you look at the price of increase in price of vegetables, from September 2010 to April 2011, FOMCA says that the prices of 8 most favored vegetables that our Malaysian households buy has increased between 40 and 60%. That's number one. Number two, June 1st, the government has already announced that the subsidies for diesel will be reduced for trucks and so on and so forth, for 6 different categories of shipment or transport, which actually then says that the cost of transport will also increase. That's number two. And then you have food prices increasing as a result of that. So a whole variety, multiply effect has taken place, and now you suddenly see that this price increase is really beginning to affect the working class, especially in the urban areas. And you already can see people are getting quite upset by this, especially given the fact that our wages are low. In fact, a World Bank study for the Malaysian Human Resources Ministry indicates that in the last 15 years, that means from 1995 to 2010, the last 15 years, the wage level increase in wage level is only 2.6%, which means that if you had earned say 1,000 ringgit in 1995, you still earn the 1,000 in 2010. There's absolutely no difference. But as you know, inflation has gone up, and the last 8 to 10 months, it has gone up quite substantially though. So what you really see is that this has led to a poverty situation. We have now the working poor. Malaysia says our poverty rates, our absolute poverty rate is very small, and that might be true. But relative poverty has really increased. And I think it also shows that we have now become highly unequal, both in terms of income as well as wealth distribution. And these are the factors that is making people quite upset though. So actually prices have increased quite a bit and wages are down. So going forward, what do we do? The government now must say, I think this is really rightful, that the government puts forward a decent living wage. Which will be sufficient to support the Malaysian family. It cannot be a wage of 700 ringgit or between 500 and 700 ringgit, which the government has proposed for security guards. That is actually poverty wages. We need a decent living wage, and I think one can say that it should be between 1,500 and 2,000 ringgit. So I think what we really have to look at is that the government is withdrawing subsidies, but at the same time not ensuring that a quality of life can be maintained by the Malaysian family. Now, having said that, it's also important to recognize that the government is subsidizing the rich and the cronies though. Like for example, if you look at the whole subsidy debate that's going on in the country, the question that is being asked is, why is the government still subsidizing the independent power producers though? For example, the cost of production for Petronas for gas, I think it's called MMBTU, millimeters British thermal unit. The cost of production for Petronas gas is about 15 to 16 ringgit Malaysia. But in the 90s and 1995, the government of Malaysia sold gas per BTU to Petronas, to independent power producers at 6 ringgit and 40 cents. Cost of production is 15 to 16 ringgit, but they sold it at 6 ringgit and 40 cents, and subsequently as a result of pressure it increased to $10.70, and now it is at 13 ringgit and 70 cents. There is still a subsidy. That's number one. Number two, the rate of return on investments. The rate of return on investments for the first generation independent power producers is about 20%, which is extremely very high. And then third, this is agreement between IPPs and TNB, where you have a situation whereby TNB is forced to buy all the electricity that is produced by the independent power producers, to the point right now that TNB is sitting with a 40% energy reserve.
YB, given this situation, why is there no urgency or a plain reluctance on the part of the UMNO BN government to re-engage and renegotiate the lopsided deals with the IPPs?
Yes, that's exactly what it is, and that's something that I've proposed in the last couple of weeks, and others have proposed it earlier. That why don't you bring them back to the negotiating table, and work out a system where it's a win-win for everybody. Though right now it's the people who are losing, the government is losing, people are losing, but the independent power producers are gaining, and also now TNB is bleeding because of the subsidy, because they are forced to buy all this electricity from independent power producers. So I think the reason they don't want to do that is because these are all politically connected companies. They're all politically connected companies, which I think provides support, financial support. I would imagine for the ruling government, UMNO in particular. So why go and disturb them when they're paying your bills? So I think this cozy relationship between independent power producers as well as UMNO, business and politics, is the cozy relationship is the prime reason why the Barisan government doesn't want to go after to renegotiate these contracts, despite the criticisms that's been put forward. And I think the other way of looking at it is to get TNB to take over the independent power producers. That'll be the best way.
YB, coming back to tariff rates, the Minister of Energy, Green Energy and Water, Dato' Peter Chin, nonchalantly told the Rakyat to brace itself for tariff hikes every 6 months based on the adoption of the fuel cost pass-through mechanism adopted by the government. What are the merits and demerits of the system?
I guess what he's trying to say is that the price will be determined by international changes or international fluctuation, and that has to be factored in as part of the prices that we offer in Malaysia. So if prices go up, then we too will have to increase our prices. I think that's the point that he was trying to make. And I think this feed-in mechanism is something that is used quite a bit in the region and elsewhere. But I think end of the day, you can have all kinds of feed-in systems and in systems and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, it's affordability that matters though. And I think this is where the people and the government have to make a decision. What is important for the family, and how do you protect the interests of the family? We are giving subsidies to the rich, to the cronies and so on, but we do not want to give subsidies to ensure a minimum quality of life for the Malaysian family, for the Malaysian worker, or the Malaysian farmer, or the Malaysian fisherman. I think this is the question that needs to be asked. Why are we focusing on making the rich already even richer and making the poor even more poorer? I think this is the challenge that we have, and unfortunately this is the paradigm of growth that we are part of now. And therefore what we need right now in Malaysia is a fairer distribution of wealth. A fairer distribution of wealth. That is what we need. But unfortunately in this present paradigm of change, or this present paradigm, economic paradigm that we have under Barisan, that will not be possible though.
YB, we will take a short break now and return shortly. To our respected audience, we trust you will be with us when we return to continue our discussion, the rising cost of living, with Yang Berhormat Charles Santiago, the Honourable Member of Parliament for Klang. Welcome back to Perception. Our topic of discussion today is the rising cost of living, and with us is Yang Berhormat Charles Santiago, the Honourable Member of Klang, the Honourable Member of Parliament for Klang, to answer our questions. YB, apart from the rising petrol prices, tariff rates, is the GST another ominous thing on the Malaysian horizon?
I think the government will implement the GST, the Goods and Services Tax,